Emmanuel Macron is picking up the tradition of the presidential speech on the July 14th Bastille celebrations, which he had more or less ended up until now.
Yes, he did do one during COVID because of the particular circumstances. But he said at the beginning in 2017, when he was first elected president, that he felt that that was a bit of an outdated format, this formal address every year on the same date. And he made it clear that he didn't intend to carry on with it. Things have changed since then, and he is now doing it against a much more complicated political background. Of course, he was elected president, but a number of people abstained, and many people said they voted for him out of default. They didn't want Marine Le Pen. The two of them were left in the final two of the presidentials. And of course, since then, in the legislative elections, the parliamentary elections, his party has failed to win an absolute majority. That really curtails his ability to do what he wants with France. And so he is now making a speech against a very, very different background. Polls show that about 71% of the French people did want Macron to have to operate with not an absolute majority. They felt it would dilute his power and that that would be a good thing. So he has had to really digest that, and the French people have really had to digest that. And this is one of his first addresses. He made a very short address appealing for parties to get together and try and form a coalition. That failed. But otherwise, he hasn't really spoken to the French people since the results of the parliamentary elections back in June.
So how are the results of those parliamentary elections playing out today?
In Parliament, it's a bad-tempered mood. It's a noisy place. It's not necessarily, for many French people, a bad thing that in Parliament you have some very sizable groupings with very different opinions. A lot of people are pleased that, in a sense, it's put Parliament back at the centre of French democracy, where it hasn't been for 60 years or so. In terms of the two extremes, the far left, the La France Insoumise, have been particularly noisy, boisterous, and look to be set on a path of more or less systematic opposition to whatever the government proposes. Meanwhile, on the far right, the Rassemblement National, Marine Le Pen's party, have worked very hard. They're trying to look respectable, to show their respect for French institutions, and they're on a bit of a drive, which she has ordered them to be on, to dress well and to show respect and to show that they might one day be fit for power. So the mood is angry, boisterous, but that is Parliament, many people will say, and it's back in business. In terms of defeats, Macron's party and Elizabeth Borne's government are going to have to get used to negotiating every single bill they want and trying to get votes from here and there, because they don't have a coalition, they don't have a party they can rely on apart from their own. The first casualty has been a bill on reintroducing the vaccination certificate. That went by the wayside, more or less, or was heavily diluted this week against opposition.
So, Angela, how do you think that all of this is going to feature in his speech today, if at all?
Yeah, I think he'll do something, a sort of a State of the Nation speech. He will certainly, of course, talk about Ukraine and how it's impacted on France in a domestic sense as well, in terms of inflation, energy worries. There are so many other impacts of the Ukraine war. There is some suggestion that he might try to change his image. Of course, Macron cannot be re-elected, so he has no need to pursue votes in that sense. And he might try, some people are saying, to go from being the disruptor, the provocative guy, to something closer to the father of the nation. Difficult, he's not that old, but you acquire a certain wisdom over the ride of politics, and so he might try to project that sort of an image. Otherwise, 87% of the French people approve of the army. He will certainly want to reinforce the importance of the army, that link with the nation, and the opportunities it gives to people in search of structure in their lives and discipline and a way of integrating. I think he'll very much insist on that as well.
All right, well, we will wait and see, Angela.